The Aichi D3A, known by the Allied reporting name Val, was the prime carrier-borne dive bomber employed by the Imperial Japanese Navy during World War II. This aircraft, officially designated as the Navy Type 99 Carrier Bomber Model 11, played a significant role in Japan's early wartime successes, particularly during the attack on Pearl Harbor and in the Philippines. Originating from a design competition initiated by the Imperial Japanese Navy in 1936 to replace the aging D-1A2 biplane dive bombers. The Val was developed by the successful Aichi Kokuki Company and designed under the supervision of Toshio Ozaki and his team, who aimed to create a robust and effective carrier-based dive bomber influenced by contemporary German Heinkel HE-70. The prototype first flew in January 1938, and testing found it quite wanting. It was clearly underpowered, but also suffered from directional instability in wide turns, while tighter turns made it snap roll. It also suffered tremendous shuddering during dive bombing, with its dive flaps fully extended. And these shortcomings, plus the Navy's new request for a faster craft to compete with American planes being used in the war against China, led to some serious modifications. The Nakajima Hikari 1 engine was replaced by the more powerful 1,000 horsepower Mitsubishi Kinsei 43 or the 1,070 horsepower Kinsei 44, increasing its speed to a maximum of 240 miles per hour. The directional instability problem was cured with the fitting of a long dorsal fin strake, which started midway down the rear fuselage, and by increasing the torsional lowering of the wings. As a result, the Val became highly maneuverable. Lastly, the dive brakes were substantially strengthened. In its final incarnation, the Aichi D3A was characterized by its low-wing monoplane configuration and distinctive spatted main landing gear. It had a length of 33 feet 5 inches, a height of 12 feet and 7 inches. Its wingspan now was 47 feet and 2 inches, and a total wing area of 376 square feet. Its range was 915 miles, had a service ceiling of 30,400 feet, and could reach 10,000 feet in 6 minutes, 27 seconds. The Val's armament were 2 fixed, forward-firing 7.7mm Type 97 machine guns and 1 flexible Type 97 machine gun at the rear end of the cockpit, which was operated by the observer. Normal bomb load was a single 250-kilogram bomb, either armor-piercing for shipping or standard for land targets, carried under the fuselage, swung out under the propeller on release by a trapeze. 2 additional 60-kilogram bombs could be carried on wing racks. The pilot position was equipped with a Type 95 telescopic gun sight, which was used for aiming the bomb during the dive. The observer would assist in the bombing utilizing a Type 97 Mark I drift sight and drift meter, in addition to his responsibilities as navigator, rear gunner, radio operator, and target spotter. The Val, following its myriad of modifications, was accepted into service on December 16, 1939. But even before its acceptance, the Model 11 first engaged in combat in November 1939. Aichi deployed several units to the 14th Air Group stationed at Haiku on Hainan Island in South China. Under the command of Lieutenant Sadamu Takahashi, these D3As provided support to the Imperial Japanese Army during the capture of Nanning, a strategic move to disrupt supply lines from French Indochina. Following the success at Nanning, the aircraft continued operations in the region into 1940. In May of that year, the 12th Air Group became the second frontline unit to receive the new units. They played a pivotal role in the capture of Yichang and executed anti-shipping missions along the Yangtze River, aiming to sever supply routes from Chongqing. By September, the Japanese 12th Air Group were conducting sorties against Chongqing, then the Chinese capital. After the autumn 1940 invasion of Indochina, the 14th Air Group operated out of Hanoi, targeting Kunming and the Burma Road. Interestingly, this formative period for the Imperial Japanese Navy produced a very effective tactical doctrine, the first air fleet, known as Kido Butai, translated into English as mobile force, maximized the effectiveness of airborne combined arms tactics by deploying 2 divisions, each comprising 2 carriers. These carriers hosted divided strike forces, one division primarily equipped with dive bombers and the other with torpedo planes, while the fighter escort and combat air patrol duties were shared among all 4 carriers. The squadrons of the Imperial Japanese Navy, called Chutai, consisted of 9 aircraft divided into 3 smaller units called Shotai. The D3A dive bombers approached from high altitudes to facilitate long-range spotting by the chief observer of the squadron, typically stationed aboard the Chutai leader's aircraft. Although spotting could be conducted by any Val dive bomber within the formation, the groups of 3 aircraft operated with 2 Shotai on the wings and 1 at the front, led by the Chutai leader. Upon identifying a target, the squadron would close in from a distance of 10 to 14 miles, ideally from the target's front. According to operational manuals, the attack began from an altitude of 9,800 feet, descending to 3,000 feet. The Chutai would then split into 3 independent Shotai, allowing each section to select its own attack path without interference. Each Shotai had a leader, determined by who had the most experience, including the observer, who would approach the ship on various angles to avoid the risk of the ship avoiding the attack, before starting their final dive in a steep, almost 60-degree angle. This standard tactic was often employed in conjunction with 2 other Chutai of the Nakajima B5N Kate in both bombing and torpedo-carrying configurations. When executed effectively, the B5N bombers would release their payloads from a high altitude, while the torpedo-carrying B5Ns would simultaneously conduct their torpedo attacks. Ideally, the torpedo planes would initiate their assault slightly earlier, compelling the target ship to make a sharp evasive turn to port or starboard. The leader of the Val dive bomber, Chutai, would then calculate an optimal trajectory to intercept the ship during its evasive maneuver. Conversely, depending on the circumstances, primarily the timing of squadron arrivals, the Vals could initiate the attack with their dives. This would draw anti-aircraft fire towards them, thereby allowing the Kates to conduct their perilous torpedo runs at low altitude, just above the waves, where the target ship was maneuvering. It was an astonishingly effective tactic. Together with the Type 0 fighter and the Nakajima B5N Kate torpedo bomber, the Val was key to the successful advance of the Imperial Japanese Navy in the early stages of the Pacific War. Indeed, the Val was the first aircraft bearing the insignia of the rising sun to bomb U.S. shipping in World War II. When Japan simultaneously attacked American military bases in Hawaii, Wake Island, Guam, and the Philippines, the British colonies of Malaya, Singapore, and Hong Kong, and invaded Thailand on the 7th of December 1941, the Val was in the vanguard. At the Pearl Harbor attack and throughout its deployment, the Val showed a remarkably high dive bombing hit rate. According to the American judgment, it was estimated that 47.7% of bombs dropped by Vals at Pearl Harbor met target. The Val's 250-kilogram armor-piercing bombs hit the battleship USS Nevada more than 6 times. The battleship USS Maryland and Pennsylvania won each. The light cruiser USS Helena and Raleigh won each. The destroyer USS Cassin, Downs, and Shaw won each. The first 10 months of the war saw them extremely active, and during the Indian Ocean raid in April 1942, they reached their greatest tally, scoring over 80% hits and sinking the British cruisers HMS Cornwall and HMS Dorsetshire, and the aircraft carrier HMS Hermes, which was bombed by 45 aircraft and hit by 37 bombs. Interestingly, a Val with land bombs took part in the attack on Hermes, unintentionally proving very effective. Their blast cleaned up the cruiser's decks, nullifying anti-aircraft defense and allowing the pinpoint accuracy by the following VALs equipped with armor-piercing bombs. That accidental success led to modifying the tactical doctrine, having in each chutai one shotai in the lead equipped with land bombs. But in fact, due to its tandem attacks with the Nakajima B-5N Kate, it's very difficult to ascertain the total tonnage of Allied shipping sunk attributed to the VAL's bombings. Some attribute it to holding the record for having sunk the most Allied ships out of all Axis aircraft. Probably, but the VAL had more targets, and they tended to be easier to sink when one compares the US wooden-decked flat tops with British armoured ones. Aichi produced 476 D3A Model 11s, but even in the early stages of the Pacific War, the Model 11 had become insufficient in terms of performance, so in August 1942, an improved prototype was built, tentatively called the Model 12, or the Model 22 for the Navy. Then, in January 1943, it was officially adopted as the D3A2. The engine was replaced by the Kinsei Type 54 with 1,300 horsepower. The extra power reduced range, so the design was further modified with additional fuel tanks to bring the total tankage to 900 litres. A propeller spinner was added, the windshield was extended at the rear, and the engine cowling and the leading edge of the tailplane were changed. These modifications increased its speed to a maximum of 270 miles per hour, and climbing power to 10,000 feet in 5 minutes 48 seconds, but reduced the cruising performance. In 1942, operations in New Guinea and the Solomon Islands saw the enhanced D3A2 playing a significant role. This aircraft notably contributed to the sinking of the USS Lexington during the Battle of the Coral Sea, the USS Yorktown at the Battle of Midway, and the USS Hornet at the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands. Furthermore, the USS Enterprise sustained severe damage due to D3A hits at both the Battle of the Eastern Solomons and the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands, although none proved fatal. The D3A, which was now superseded by the new D3A2, was frequently used in land-based operations, proving particularly valuable during the Solomon Islands campaign and the Battle of Guadalcanal. Notable operations involving the D3A included Operation IG, the aerial counteroffensive against Allied targets on and around Guadalcanal and the Russell Islands in the Solomons and Port Moresby, Oro Bay, and Milne Bay in New Guinea. Operation SE, a strike against Allied ships off the coast of Lunga on Guadalcanal, and Operation RO, the Japanese reinforcement of their base area round Rabaul in New Britain Island. In New Guinea, they participated in the Battle of Milne Bay and the Battle of Bunagona. But by this stage of the war, the Allies had begun to establish air superiority in the region. Indeed, as the war progressed, the D3A's performance began to lag behind newer Allied aircraft, leading to its gradual replacement by a more advanced model, the Yokosuka D4Y Suisei, codenamed Judy by the Americans. The remaining D3A2 dive bombers were stationed at land-based airfields, continuing to conduct occasional attacks. Some of these aircraft, left behind on isolated islands bypassed during the island-hopping campaign, were repurposed as makeshift fighters and interceptors. Stripped of their payloads and despite their fixed undercarriage, they demonstrated remarkable agility. In numerous encounters with the F-4F Wildcats, the VALs often managed to survive, and they succeeded in shooting down many Allied attack planes. D3A2s also remained in service aboard the smaller carriers of the Imperial Japanese Navy, as they were better suited than the heavier and fast-landing Judy dive bombers, becoming a common asset on escort carriers in 1944 and 1945. During the U.S. recapture of the Philippines in 1944, Land-based D3A2s launched numerous attacks against the advancing forces, although they suffered heavy losses. The last major carrier battle between Japan and the US was in June 1944. 27 D3A2s flew into the Battle of the Marianas, where they were all shot down, along with hundreds of other Japanese aircraft in what would later be known as the Marianas Turkey Shoot. The remaining D3A2s were relegated to training units back in Japan, aiding in the preparation of D4Y pilots. Several were modified with dual controls, becoming the Navy Type 99 Bomber Trainer Model 12 or D3A2K. Sadly, in the last gasps of the Japanese Empire, D3A2s were used in 1945 for kamikaze missions, USS Abner Reed, an American destroyer, being sunk by one such kamikaze on the 1st of November 1944, and USS William D. Porter on the 10th of June 1945 off Okinawa. Despite its eventual obsolescence, the Aichi D3A remains a significant aircraft in the history of naval aviation, symbolizing Japan's early wartime prowess and the strategic importance of carrier-borne dive bombers in achieving naval dominance. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and leave a comment. If you would like to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to the channel.